Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. It is Thursday. We're looking at a 4-game slate here on the docket after a pretty nice 10-gamer where we went 6-2 between our best bets and our player props. Got best bets in this video, player props in the other one, so make sure to subscribe to that page and continue to follow along. Also want you to head to thelines.com and use everything we have up on the site right now as you're betting on these NBA games, including that prop finder tool to make sure you're getting the best juice back on all of these books that are giving you these bets in this NBA season. Nate, let's keep the heat going here and talk about possibly what I would like to call the stinky bet of the day, but I'm here to support you. So let's talk about Lakers and Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, Lakers are up to plus 12 here in this rivalry matchup at Boston, which is a scary place to play. But, I mean, this is what you have to do in sports betting is just like sometimes buck the trends. Don't look at the numbers. Close your eyes, hold your nose, and take a huge number here. I mean, this is what hit last night with the Blazers, plus 10.5 at home. I could run through how bad the Lakers have been in their last 7 defensively. They have managed to cover in at least half those games because their offense has come along. And if you think about the spot, like, yeah, they were probably never going to win that game in Atlanta, as stinky as Atlanta's been, but just back-to-back spot for a veteran team. No chance there. But, like, this is kind of like a Rubicon moment. I'm not saying the Lakers are going to win this game and then, like, turn their season around and suddenly be a championship contender. But it's like it's an embarrassment spot, to be honest. Like, if you don't bring it in this rivalry matchup and keep it within double digits, like, you are literally an embarrassing franchise at this point, and one of the worst teams in the NBA. Because we've seen, the Celtics have won 5 of the last 6 here, but the margin of victory on average is about 5 points per game. Like, they've kept it respectable. I would kind of lean towards under plus this huge spread. The total up at 242. The Celtics had gone under in 4 straight home games prior to getting the Pacers with Halliburton back. Like, they're just not playing with much pace at all at home. 94.5 pace in those games. Scoring 112, only getting to the line 18 times a game. Lakers limit free throws, not necessarily getting their huge assist rate that we saw earlier in the season. When these teams have met, they've played at about a 99 pace. So, I mean, that's clearly like the two are correlated. Like, if this game is not a situation where the Celtics are scoring 120 plus, like, the Lakers are going to be able to cover this number. Like, I don't see a world where they're only scoring 97 on the road. Like, LeBron and company will be able to put up some points. It's just a question of whether their defense will be as bad as it's been lately, which is to say, 123 defensive rating, terrible 3-point defense in their last 7, coughing up a ton of assists per game. All that being said, like, when they're road dogs, their average margin of loss is only -8. So, I mean, 12 points, I think you got to take it here. And just look at their game log. Like, when it is like a situation where they're playing like a blue blood or, it's the Clippers, it's a team that like really gets their antennae up. The Lakers do tend to cover at least, or cover a 10-point spread. So I'm just going to follow that and close my eyes about all these horrible defensive numbers.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a 4-game slate. So that's a good starting point. I'm terrified. You really got to, it's the defensive turnaround that you're getting ahead of almost, right? That you're like banking on here is that this team will suddenly bring it on defense. I think AD is still questionable. I don't think he plays personally because of this 11.5 point spread. I just can't tell if it's like the Lakers tax, where it's like almost a little bit lower because AD's not playing, but it's still, and maybe that should make it 12.5, 13. But in reality, like, you get the Lakers tax, which is always, you got to pay a couple points if you want to bet on the Lakers, because everybody wants to bet on the Lakers. But this would be a big moment. I'm on team fade this team, and if there's a team that can win by 12 at home, right, it's this one. I get the necessity for this win, so we can go ahead and bank on LeBron beating LeBron in this one. I thought that might have been the case in Atlanta, and that didn't really account for much either, right? And like you said, back-to-back, different scenario. Could have even been gearing up for this one, already on the East Coast. So hopefully they bring it in this one, man, and then that can justify how much SportsCenter still talks about the Lakers. Let's go to that Indy and Knicks game here, and I'm going with an under. I hit, full transparency, I hit this last night at 242.5. under, and it's down to 238.5. I'm not saying I moved markets. I'm just saying I was a part of the trend of probably smart bettors that came in on the under on that one. And that reasoning for me, as I was actually talking to a few guys last night about this, is simply like Halliburton minutes restriction. Pacers, not the same Pacers that we thought. There's the other biggest reasoning is Bruce Brown not being on the team. So it's at 238.5 now. That's 4 points less than I already hit it, and I'm still putting it out there as a good bet because 238.5 in this game for me is too high. I think this pace is around 97, which is speeding the Knicks up. 98. Like, I do think it stays because of the fact that overall, when Halliburton's not on the floor, his on-off pace numbers are bananas. It's been that way since the start of the season. It's about 103, 104 pace when he's on the floor in games that he's in versus when he's not on the floor. And when he's not in, they're playing at 3 points possession slower as well. Everything with him off the floor is 3 points per 100 possession slower. The other thing is when he was off the floor, it wasn't quite as stark when Bruce Brown was there. When Bruce Brown was there, his on-off pace numbers were the exact same, basically the exact same as Tyrese Halliburton, where it's like 103 pace when he's on the floor, 100 when he's off of it. And then they did stagger those guys' minutes a bunch. So the second unit's not nearly as fast or effective anymore. That's got their pace down to 100 or so since Pascal Siakam showed up. Halliburton is an interesting story because he's on not a back-to-back, but he's still on a minutes restriction because they brought him back early from his injury. They wouldn't have brought him back early if he didn't want to qualify for awards and for, I think All-Star too, right? You still have to have that a certain amount of games or whatever. So like, or not All-Star, but the all teams, right? Like all NBA teams, if he wants to make those, et cetera. Yeah, exactly. Then you've got to go ahead and have the 68 games played, which is kind of wild because Joel's not going to win MVP this year. But that's why he's in there, right? That's why they're like, we'll get you in there for 19 to 22-ish minutes, and then you're coming out because we're down to have that be the case. And he put up, 15 and 10 in the 19 minutes that he played before they pulled him in the third quarter, where they're actually making a comeback against that Celtics team. So they're clearly committed to not playing Halliburton, even if they're in a game against a conference foe like this Knicks team, who they are chasing. But he's still on that minutes restriction, according to all the reports coming out of Indiana. So with that in mind, the quick things about the matchup, New York does limit transition points since they got OG. They're back up to 10th. They were actually a bit worse than that in terms of defending transition points, and that's points per possession in the transition for them. Teams do try to speed them up because they're such a good half-court defense. But yeah, that's not what they're going to be giving up too much anymore. And like I said, playing in the slowest pace on the season since they got OG are the Knicks. The 91 pace, dude. It's in the last two specifically without him. The games without him too, averaging 214. He might play. He's had props up the last 3 games and then not played. So it's all possible. But with the way that like the Pacers actually limit a few good things too. They limit jump shots. The Knicks are not getting to the rim without Julius Randle and without their lob threats in their like Mitch Rob. So not as much going into the paint, which is where Indiana's vulnerable. They're actually good at limiting assists, which the Knicks don't do, but they're good at limiting jump shooters is sort of the takeaway from that. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and take the under here.
Yeah, the Pacers are good at limiting point guards, and Jalen Brunson is the offense right now. I mean, yeah, if you don't have OG out there, like, I mean, good luck. This is just complete Tibbs ball right now, right? It's just like throwing together a defensive scheme and like and keeping it around 200, 210 in terms of the game total, and we can grind out a win. All at the same time, if OG plays, like I love the under even more because he's a fantastic defender, and you throw him on Siakam, and if Halliburton's not a full-time player, book it. Yeah, I mean,
real quick, Taj Gibson as well is a New York Knick, and we might get some Taj Gibson minutes. That equals the under as well.
Taj sighting. Yeah, I mean, we can go into the 65 game requirement at a later date. Hopefully, I mean, we are glad Halliburton's out there, good for our bags on those futures bets because we would like him to get some awards. But let's look at this Philly at Utah game. We're both going to talk about it with the caveat that will Tyrese Maxey return? The Sixers are hopeful he will, in which case, we've seen the total fluctuate from 238 to 235 and back based on, the possibility that he returns. I'll just take the Jazz to score 122 though, because I mean, either way, like I love this Jazz team at home after their rough road trip to come back and just keep lighting it up like they have at home in January. 7 games, 135 a game at 102 pace, giving 30 free throw attempts, shooting 40% from deep. They're 5-2 to the over by 14 points a game at home. So like not even close. These teams are both top 7 to the over in general. A lot of that is when Joel Embiid's in there, but honestly, when they have Maxey and not Embiid, we've talked about a lot. more pace, 98 and a half pace versus 95 without Maxey, and they score 11 more points per game when they have Maxey. That's not to say with or without Embiid, just like whether Maxey's playing or not. So I would look at the game total if Tyrese is able to give it a go here. But either way, I mean, the Sixers defense, like clearly they're just going to let go of the rope. If they don't have Maxey, they have no chance. We've seen on this 4-game road trip, they're giving up 123 and a half a game. They're giving up 30 assists, 53 paint points, the second most free throws, and struggling to even rebound the ball without Embiid. So, like, it's pretty simple to me. Like, Jazz are going to score a lot, and if the Sixers have their guy, they're going to come along for the ride. Otherwise, they're just going to get blown out. So, enter Josh's bet.
Yep, 100%. It's that is my favorite bet from this game is the Jazz team total. That was something I would looked at initially. Saw that you liked it as well, and was like, well, I still think they're going to win. I think they're going to smack them. It's only gone up a point, and I think people I spoke to definitely are waiting for the Maxey news. And I'm not. I don't really care if he plays or not for how the Jazz are going to play in this game, because the Jazz at home are the '96 Chicago Bulls. I don't know if you knew that. I mean, not in the way they play, because they're dropping like $124 at home, and I don't know that the Bulls ever came close to that number. But they're also only giving up 113 at home. It's incredible as we continue to talk about their stark home road splits that will be there all season. I don't even know how they get this down, but they're playing at the same 101 pace, and this is just all about no Embiid, man. This team has been a bit of a shell of itself in terms of the 76ers. And they had some nice games in the middle of the season where they were like, Embiid's out with some rest. There's this weird feeling now that it's like, well, Embiid's out and he's actually hurt, and this is our season now, as opposed to like, oh, okay, Embiid's missing a Wednesday game on, after 3 games in 4 nights against the Grizzlies or whatever, right? That wasn't whatever, but now it's a bit serious, and that seems to have impacted their play. Without him, everything just is so different. Obviously, they scored 10 fewer points per game, or 11 fewer. They're giving up 4 more. They're getting 6 fewer rebounds. Obviously, the big one is they get to the free throw line. They go from the number 1 free throw shooting team to all the way down to about 5 or 6 fewer free throws per game without the big man, who obviously just gobbles up those free throw attempts and lives there. Against the Jazz, like, really what you got to do, if you can, is stop their guards from attacking the rim. And there's not really that much on the perimeter in the way of shooting. Jordan Clarkson hasn't been spotting up as much, trying to get the ball in his hands and go to the rim. Those are all things that are going to be available against Philly, whose paint defense just vanishes basically without Embiid in there. And it really has never been present without him in the game. Even when he's off the floor, there's a complete difference between their ability to guard the rim and not guard it. And that seems super obvious, but like, to be clear, he was superhuman at the rim this year so far, with like a top 5 defensive field goal percentage, despite the fact that he's getting he's attempting to block the most shots at the rim. He's in the top 3 there as well, because he's coming off of his guy when he has to. He's the only rim protection for this team. Now you've got guys like Markkanen and John Collins, who have been playing small ball 5 and 4. That's just going to keep working even better. I think it would have worked to run him off the floor, but you don't really need Walker Kessler to dominate in this game. And even when Walker Kessler has been in, he's been a bit more of a second unit guy. Obviously, you would have had him in there to guard Embiid. But with this thing open, love the team total more than anything. And I think even with Maxey in there, they're just going to fail to come along for the ride, because guys like Kelly Oubre have been relying either on driving or getting the kick out in a spot up attempt from Joel Embiid. That's the only way that Kelly Oubre has been scoring. And Tobias Harris, yeah, he goes to the rim a bit more without Joel. But once again, you'd also like him playing off of all these guys, obviously. He's just so much better at playing off of Joel than playing without him. So B-Ball Paul is going to be in for a world of hurt today, I think. And the Jazz are going to have a good time down low.
Yeah, I mean, whether you want to take an alternate spread or not, there's a lot of ways to bank on this being kind of a Jazz a runaway win, and talk about it in player props. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that is like fading Sixers starters, maybe even fading Jazz starters, and taking some of the ancillary guys like Jordan Clarkson, who I'm looking at in the player props. Like when it gets to a blowout, when it rains, it pours, and Jordan Clarkson is just lighting up that arena. So yeah, we're looking for that, whether Maxey plays or not.
Yep, and if Maxey doesn't play, I also like the idea of, to your point, looking at maybe some Keontae George stuff. He gets minutes when it's a blowout, for sure. They want him in there. They just obviously have their starting guard rotation intact now, with Colin Sexton being so good and Jordan Clarkson also playing so many minutes. But if you get some late, Keontae George props won't come out until like at best an hour before tip. But it is something to keep an eye on if Maxey's not in and the blowout possibilities are real. So that's all the time we have for you in Best Bets. Also have Play a Props up as we do each and every weekday. So subscribe to that page and continue to follow along. Till we see you next, happy betting.